Okay, very, very simply, two sessions, 13 and 15. The first one is to do with a reappraisal of a site that I excavated in 1993 to 1997, a place called Le Hergeby, which is in the Channel Islands between France and the UK. And it's part of the Brittany extension of passage grave monuments. And I suppose I'm being really honest with myself, because when I excavated the site 25 years ago, I had in my head all very, very sort of interesting ideas about the architecture. And in many respects, 25 years onwards to today, I have new ideas about what might be going on. And the one thing I was going to talk about in the session was to bring or draw to the attention for those who are interested in the architecture about the idea of symmetry, and also how pieces of architecture which are incorporated within the monuments, within the monument itself, how those bits of architecture behaved to people coming to the site for the first time. When I did the excavation, within the facade area, the entrance area of the monument. And just to give you some idea about how big this monument is, it's 52 meters in diameter. It currently stands at around about 12 meters high. And on top of the monument, strangely, are two medieval chapels. So people in the medieval period must have had some idea about what this monument might represent, this idea of the ancestral relationship between the medieval and prehistory. I deduced from the excavation of the facade area that there was a lot of blocking material. And the blocking material, I think, came from the top of the monument. And that would have obviously made the monument much, much higher than it is today. So it's 11 meters, 12 meters today. It would have been up to maybe 20 meters in prehistory. So it's quite a sizable monument. And what I wanted to do in the session was to talk about the idea of symmetry, the idea of this phenomenology, the semiotics, the grammar of the architecture itself. So that was going to be my sort of presentation for 13, which is actually 15. And then the second session, which I was going to be talking about, I was going to be talking with my colleague Sarah Garcias and my team from IPT, was to look at more sort of general views on nearthicization along the Atlantic facade. And we were going to use in one paper a paper to do with the two pieces of research that we've been undertaking over the last few years. One on the Dolmen de Soto in Andalusian Spain, and do a comparative analysis with that monument and the monument in North Wales called Barcladi de Gowers. And the two monuments are very, very similar. They're passage graves. They have very, very strange, idiosyncratic changes in their architecture. But what unites them is that they both have rock art. And what is interesting is that one, Dolmen de Soto, has a very schematic type of rock art. And in Barcladi de Gowers, there is more of a geometric, megalithic, traditional Northwestern European rock art. And what we wanted to do is to look at the 3,200 kilometers of coastline that separates the two monuments together, and have a look along that 3,200 kilometer coastline to see where the changes are occurring. There seems to be some very interesting things going on. And the questions that I ask, or the questions that we ask as a team is, first of all, are both monuments being constructed with the rock art, or is the rock art being added as the monument is being used? i.e., are there changes within the mindset of the Neolithic builder and the Neolithic user to stimulate the idea to create a new type of ism or religion associated with the old traditions of passage grave building? Now, we're probably only talking about maybe 300 or 400 years from the time it's being constructed to the time it goes out of use. But what is important, there are changes, and the best analogy I can think of in sort of modern material culture is in my country, in Wales, where we have the traditional medieval church, which then gets superseded by the nonconformist chapel. So the religion stays the same, but there are slight changes in the ideology of the religion. So in terms of the passage grave tradition, are we looking at the Doma de Soto and Barclay de Gowers, where we see changes in the religious order or the religious ideology, whereby they are passage graves without rock art, and then at some point, someone comes in, maybe from on the Iberian Peninsula, where you have this completely different idea of incorporating art into the passage and chambers of these monuments. So that's what we were going to do and talk about. And obviously, we were also going to talk about the idea of the interpretation and the methodologies of what we'd employed at both monuments, both Barclay de Gowers and the Doma de Soto. And again, what's interesting is that 20 years ago, when I looked at Barclay, first of all, I used the traditional tracing methodologies for recording the site. With the Doma de Soto, completely different type of technology used. We're using 2D, 3D photogrammetry. We're using Raman sampling for the pigments, which were found on several of the uprights within the monument. And this gives us obviously a more clearer idea about what is going on. And also, importantly, in terms of conservation issues, obviously on the Iberian Peninsula, because the atmospheric conditions and the climatic conditions are better than they are in Wales. If any of you have been to the UK, you'll know how bad our weather is and how exposed our monuments are, that we have a problem with the state of preservation. So with Barclay de Gowers, we could only trace 20 years ago. Now we have used 2D photography, photogrammatic techniques, but we've also learned a lot. Certainly my team in Wales has learned a lot from what we were doing, or what the team from Masau and Extramundo were doing on the Doma de Soto, where they're using completely different types of technology, which raises more questions than answers in terms of conservation. So again, a sort of very interesting sort of discussion point for future generations, or certainly future generations, and people working or going to be at the conference that was going to take place, for understanding how we can look at these monuments in a more systematic and conservation management way. And that is those two sessions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nash. I don't know if anyone has any question. I know Professor João Carlos Martínez requests to be in the session by Zoom and not by YouTube. So I would imagine that Professor João Carlos will have questions for George.
Far away.
Not many, except to say that I enjoyed very much the presentation, small as it was, but I would like to have some images with it. I know the monuments of the Boyne Valley, and of course they are full of art and carvings and things like that. And the question you raised about the art being after the building, or being part and incorporated into the building, it's very interesting one. There is no archaeological answer for that.
That's correct, João Carlos, and thank you very much for the opportunity to answer your question. I think there's a lot of, I think this is probably going to be the next revolution in terms of understanding the relationship between art and megalithic building, is to work out, which came first. Are we looking at monuments with rock art being constructed? Are we looking at the idea of ideologies coming in to the use of a monument, and then that rock art being added? or what? We don't know. I mean, what is interesting is what's been pointed out on several sites, and I'm thinking of the sites in Brittany, where you have earlier monuments being broken up deliberately and incorporated into the architecture of the monuments. And that may give us a bit of a clue about how the art is being incorporated into the monument. And to the answer to your other question, John Carlos, is that I am not very good with technology and Zoom. And I was so worried about sharing some images, which I prepared, in fact, for this session, but for some reason I couldn't get those images up. I will see if I can try and do this, but I'm worried that I might be running out of time, and yes, I won't chance it, in fact, but I do have images which I'm more than happy to share with you and send to you. But basically, they are these images of Llanhugby, Barclady de Gowers, and the Dolmen de Soto. You know, three very distinct passage grave monuments from a particular point within the Neolithic. And the one thing I've got, because of time, the one thing I have mentioned is that there is a lot of other monuments which have art on them as well. Portal dolmens, for example, and gallery graves.
Thank you for your answer. And I would like to add that, as I have a problem with my camera, unfortunately we'll be not seeing my face. So I'm sorry, but I can't.
I think it's a problem with multiple people today. So if you want to keep talking to each other, we will start the next session in the new link. But if you want, you can continue discussing whatever you want to discuss, and we'll move to the next one. That will be session 5, burial monuments and rock art, by Louis Osterbeck, Guillaume Robin, and Chris Carr. Okay. If you wish to join us, we will be welcome. George, thank you very much for being here this morning, and hope to see you soon.
You take care, sir. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you very much. Cheers.